Hello and welcome to Coffee Lovers TV. On the show today, I'm going to be taking a look at this travel French press by Planetary Design. Now I have two versions of this press here. This is the newer one over here that includes their patent pending Brü Stop technology. And basically, I'm going to show you all this in detail in a little bit. I got a little bit of an experiment going on here right now. But the Brü Stop technology, basically the idea is that it stops the French press from continuing to brew after you're done brewing, after you press. So we'll take a look at that. This is their previous design. There are a few other things going along with it. So before I can get into that stuff, I'm just going to do this fun little experiment with the Brü Stop. Now, so I actually saw them doing this at Global Coffee Expo. They had the new version with the Brü Stop and the old version without it. They had them in clear containers, so it was actually easy to see. So what I did is I tried to replicate that. I filled up with grounds, I added the filter, and then I added water. So the idea is, because all the grounds and the water brewing at the bottom here, with the Brü Stop, this water should be mostly clear. With the regular one, it probably kept brewing, so this water is likely not going to be clear. We're going to see actually how it looks. I actually have no idea. I filled it up last night, sat it overnight, and it's just kind of been sitting for a large number of hours. Now, I did know that, well, I was a little clumsy in adding the water, so there are some like grounds floating around up in this one. Probably the same in here too. This could end up being not a very good experiment, but we're going to try. So this is the regular sort of travel press. Very straightforward. It's like a screen on the end of a plunger, and that's it. And I've used this before, you know, both of these fantastic like camping sort of presses. They're a bit like heavy to do like actual traveling with, I think, but they're like super durable and you can brew good coffee with them. So we're gonna find out right now what this one looks like. So again, filled it up with grounds, I put in the filter, and then added water on top. So it's not like I brewed and then pressed. This is more like added water onto grounds at the bottom. And what often happens in a French press, like a typical basic French press just with a metal screen, is even after you press, it'll continue to brew. So we should be able to see that because the water up here should look like somewhat brewed coffee. Let's see how that turned out. That's without Brü Stop, and this is with. Like I said, I wasn't completely careful with pouring, so this may be a terrible example, but this is like, has half as much coffee in it as this one does. I'm not sure if this illustrates much to you, but you should be able to see that this has a lot more coffee in it than this one. I'm gonna go ahead and clean these out and then show you the actual difference between the two stops, talk about them a little bit more, and then we're just gonna focus on this, this newer version with the Brü Stop. We're gonna brew some coffee in it and see how it goes. So I'll be right back. All right, well, that experiment was not as illustrative as I was hoping it would be. I really just wanted to replicate the test that they had at the show, but that's okay. I think that plus what we're about to look at will hopefully give you an idea of what's going on here. So at a base level, we've got a standard like travel press. This is a double wall insulated stainless steel, pretty heavy duty. It's really nice. It's the same with their original, the main difference being handle versus the non-handle as far as that construction goes. And then you have just a basic press. Now here's the original one. So I'm gonna show that to you first. Very straightforward mesh press. And then there's an extra sort of mesh at the top here, which is I think kind of nice. It just helps keep any potential remaining floating grounds, that kind of thing, just out of you actually drinking. That is, if you like brew into this and then want to drink straight from it, which is of course an option. It's one of the designs of it. Now here's their new press. This is the Brü Stop, as they say. As you can see, it still has kind of the same, hopefully that shows up, the same base mesh, but on top of that there's this metal plate, and that is kind of the stop. It also has a kind of rubber gasket along the side. I think it's actually, I don't think it's removable. I don't want to pull at it too much, but it doesn't look removable. But it creates a seal around the edge so that no coffee is hopefully coming up around the edge. This one just had this plastic sort of outer flexible type thing. It still made contact with the edge. I'm just guessing that since they made the switch to this rubber gasket, that this maybe does a better job of keeping grounds out of your coffee. But this is the main difference structurally between the two. So the new version has this plate. Now these, so Planetary Design is the maker of these. They, you can find these like online, obviously, Amazon, but places like REI carry them, and they're awesome for camping. I mean, I really like having a brewer where I can make a good cup of coffee, but also, you know, it can take a beating. So I'm not sure if you can still get the one with the handle. There's something kind of nice about that, although it is heavier than this one. I'm going to take a quick weighing just to compare the two. The original one, 527 grams. This one is 442 grams. So almost 100 grams less for the kind of non-handled version. But I mean, if you're doing something like car camping, that is kind of irrelevant. On the other hand, if you're backpacking, they're both maybe a little too heavy, maybe. Although if you're backpacking, the handle could be strapped to the outside. I don't know. Depends on how you are with the weight of your things. That's something that's up to you. But okay, on to the brewing of the coffee. So I certainly brewed with this a few times, and it's a pretty standard French press. I mean, you're French pressing coffee, it doesn't take too much. Obviously, it has a few drawbacks in that it's not going to make the cleanest French press in the world. Just a pretty standard mesh filter on the bottom there. And you know, the sides don't really seal. Yeah, you're not getting the cleanest cup of the French press ever, but it's cheap and it's straightforward and it works. This is also cheap and straightforward and it works, and we're gonna find out how clean the coffee is that it makes with this Brü Stop. So one thing I thought I'd point out, I'll show you how this is in here. So I don't know if you can see the edges of it, but it kind of fits pretty snugly in there, and does have a little bit of wiggle room. What I found when cleaning this is that grinds get stuck between, or can get stuck between the plate and the mesh. But fortunately, like most French presses, this just unscrews, and then you can pull out the plate. Just be careful of this. This is what it's screwing into at the bottom. So, you know, don't do this over your sink and then lose this down the drain. That just fits in the bottom right there. Okay, and then the plate kind of fits snugly within these ridges. And that's the Brü Stop. All right, so I'm just gonna brew on it. I've got this Columbia roasted on the bellwether. It's got a bit of chocolatiness to it, some candy orange. And I'm doing 32 grams of this and 500 grams of water. This says 20 ounces, which means it should hold almost 600 milliliters of water, but gotta leave room for the coffee and the brewer, so hopefully this will work out. We'll see here. Of course, one hardly needs a gooseneck kettle for this, but it's what I have. In lieu of stirring, I'm just making sure that all gets fully saturated. Looks like you can go up to maybe, if you do this when you're waiting for it to brew, let's see how far we can go up. I'm gonna do a little bit more. Okay, go up to about 550. Probably don't wanna do more than that. So you could go 34 grams coffee, 550 grams of water, something like that. Any more than that, you're gonna run out of room. If I wanted to cap this completely while it's brewing, I'd have to do less. Oh yeah, let me start the timer. And now we're just gonna wait for the coffee to brew. I'll be back in 4 minutes. I'm just gonna skip ahead and we'll press and drink, and maybe I'll give some final thoughts. Let's see what we see. Okay, so we've been brewing for a little over 4 minutes. Time to press. Let's see how this does. I'm just gonna go right into it. So far, pressing seems pretty smooth. I'm not really using that much pressure. I'm just going a little slow just to make sure that the grounds stay below the filter. There's no reason to use like a lot of pressure in a French press. if you do use pressure in a French press, then you're going to end up forcing grounds above the filter, and that will make a less enjoyable experience. Here's something of note, which I can't really show on the camera because well, I can't really tilt this over. But after I put the cap fully in, a little bit of coffee popped out the top. So maybe 550 is a little too much. Maybe the 32 grams of coffee to 500 grams of water is the sweet spot. And that does allow me to, 32 grams of coffee does allow me to put the plunger down all the way. In honor of the camping nature of these, I've got my favorite camping cup. Let's see how this does. I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to test the Brü Stop. I mean, in theory, it should at least aid in reducing the likelihood of continuously brewing the grounds at the bottom. There's this, and I'm gonna have to wait here as this cools off, and this is a good time to talk about this. This is something that comes up whenever I talk about a travel brewing press. When you're brewing into a thermally insulated container, it's going to stay very, very hot for a long time. And that means that when you when you French press into a container like this, I don't know how long it would take for you to be able to drink out of it, but I think it's gonna be a pretty long time. Like, I poured out of this, and this still looks quite hot. I mean, that's still pretty hot. Well, that tastes good though. Oh, it's actually a pretty smooth cup of coffee. I don't think that. So here's the thing about the new version. So it's not exactly a finer filter. It's just a filter with a metal plate on top of it that I think will mostly keep anything below the filter from coming out the top unless you agitate it a bunch. I mean, it makes a good French press. So back to the temperature point. So if I brew directly into here and now I want to drink from this, there's no way I could drink directly from this right now because it's still going to be steaming hot. I mean, just go ahead and like, that's really hot coffee. And I have no desire to scald my mouth on it. Any thermally insulated French press is going to have that same challenge. And this is what I always do with this one, or I do with this one, is brew in it and then serve in a smaller container. And that works just fine. Now you can get some additions for these. So when I got this originally, it came with the press, but it also came with this extra lid. So you could either after pressing or maybe even brewing in another container and using this as a travel mug, just fit this right on top and boom, you have a sealable top full travel mug. So these look like they're exactly the same size. I actually tested, this filter fits perfectly in here, so I'm assuming everything is the same and that this could work in here as well. You can probably get these separate. I might be speaking out of turn on that, but you could do that. This lid also works just fine. I mean, as you saw, I can pour from it, of course. So you could drink out of that as well. The key to a French press is mostly just get good coffee, grind it well enough, and then brew to the right ratio. So that is Planetary Design's steel toe coffee press to go. Double wall insulated and with the Brü Stop. So I will link to where you can find this. And if I can find this as well, I'll link to that and maybe some of their other options. Fantastic for camping. Perhaps a little too heavy to travel with, but this might also make a good sit at your office desk kind of easy to use brewer. You are of course going to have the challenge of cleaning out the grinds, which is a much easier proposition when you're in the forest since you can just dump water in there, swish it around and toss it all into a bush. Cleaning it here, it's like any other regular French press, you gotta scoop all the grounds out. Every French press is like that, so if you have any questions, of course, please feel free to leave them below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.